I'm going to show you how to make a secure case for your smartphone using readily available materials that don't cost very much. This is a way to make a smartphone secure case. If for some reason you can't get one commercially, these are a type which is available on Amazon, but maybe they're no longer available. Maybe you don't want Amazon or other people to even know that you have one of these. Maybe you're in a situation where you need to make one of these quickly. What a secure case does is it has a metal or conducting lining. It hermetically seals that lining, and I'll explain how important that is further in the video. And you put your phone inside of it, and it can't talk to the cell networks, to Wi-Fi, to Bluetooth, to any kind of radio network. You've gone completely dark. You can keep the phone with you for emergencies or special occasions, special usage, but you can completely off the network. You can't be tracked. The phone can't report what you're doing to giant companies, the government, whoever you might be worried about. Now, these are available commercially for around $20, $30 right now from Amazon. Again, they could become unavailable. So how would you make one if they're not available? They're also expensive. I'm going to show you a way to make them for a few dollars instead of $20 using readily available household materials. And also, this is a way, what I'm going to show you is a way to have one secretly, and nobody knows that you have it. You're just making it from regular available materials that are used for many other purposes. So this is a fully secure case. It's made of painter's tape. Probably other types of tape or other materials will work. It has a flap. You open it up. This is very important. We have a little seal here, again made with painter's tape. Inside, it has tinfoil. Nothing very special. The tinfoil is what is metal conducting, is electrically conductive, and it provides the actual security. But it's very fragile, which is why we reinforce it heavily with the painter's tape or some other type of tape or material. Okay, so the phone is inside. So the version I'm going to show you doesn't have this carrying case. It's simpler. But I have the phone inside of this carrying case. I took the phone out, and that's my smartphone. The reason for the carrying case, and I'll do something simpler in this demo, is because the touchscreen is affected by contact with the foil, and it can do weird things. Actually, in theory, it shouldn't do some of the weird things I've seen, but it appears to do so. So you want to wrap it in some kind of insulating material. This carrying case is made from paper towel with some reinforcement with the painter's tape. I'm actually going to show you how to make one of these, which doesn't require the carrying case. It's going to have painter's tape inside, providing a place where you can put the phone and preventing this touchscreen, which is electrically active, from touching the metal foil interior. And the same problem, by the way, occurs with the commercial ones here. You also want to wrap the phone in some kind of insulating material, like a piece of paper or something like that. Paper towel works very well. Another comment to be aware of is when you put the phones in these, whether they're the commercial type that you can buy or whether it's a homemade one, which is what I'm going to show you how to do. I'm going to show you a homemade DIY, do-it-yourself way to make these. In both cases, you want to put it in airplane mode, so it's not trying to talk to the network. If it is not in airplane mode, when it's inside of these containers, the phones will frequently try to talk and run down the battery very rapidly. If you put them in airplane mode and turn them off, you can just leave them in the phone and they'll be ready to go. So if you need them in an emergency, you just take it out and open the phone and take it out of airplane mode, which takes at most a few seconds. If you had it actually physically powered down, that often takes 30 seconds, a minute, maybe even longer to get the phone back up and running. So what you want to do is have the phone in airplane mode when it's in a secure case, like the homemade one I'm going to show you, or the commercial ones. And you always want it in airplane mode or run down very quickly and have problems. So the best thing is airplane mode, but you leave it on, you don't power it off. It's on, it's basically asleep, and it's in airplane mode. So I'm going to show you how to make the do-it-yourself case. This is a do-it-yourself case, and what we're going to make it from is, as I mentioned, painter's tape. There are probably other types of tape or materials. There's a range of materials you can experiment with, cloth, felt, but this works. It provides the reinforcement, makes it look okay, looks better than foil, reinforces it, it prevents it from breaking, and painter's tape is readily available all over the place. But other materials, other types of tape, you can combine tape and maybe light cardboard, various other ways of doing it, which I may show in later videos, but here I'm going to show how to do it with painter's tape. With tin foil, oh, actually it's aluminum foil, a conducting material. This is readily available at grocery stores, five and dimes, pretty much lots of places. It's widely used. You'll need a ruler. Now this is a kind of a fancy ruler. You can do it with less fancy rulers. You'll need the ruler for measuring things and also for cutting things and a few other tasks like that. And you will need a pair of scissors. And I believe that's everything that I need. If not, I will show you the remaining things. So again, the painter's tape, that's for reinforcing and protecting the foil, which is very fragile and will fall apart without something like this, if not painter's tape. Foil, tin foil. So that's tin foil, or actually it's aluminum foil. Typically you'd be using aluminum foil. But again, that's the conducting material. That provides the actual shielding from the radio networks, from the cellular networks, from Wi-Fi, from Bluetooth, from other radio communications that might be going on with your phone. And pair of scissors. Pretty straightforward. All right, so let me now show you how you do this. All right, so I'm going to put aside this. I'm going to keep my phone, and I'll use the phone while I'm building this, while I'm making it. I want to test the performance of it by making a phone call with my phone. If the secure case is working correctly, then once you put this in and close the flap, seal it hermetically, you make a call to it, it will not pick it up. Now, if something's wrong, there's a crack, something like that, you'll detect it by running that test. You can verify the secure case works by phoning your phone. So you put it in not in airplane mode so it can receive a call. That's for testing purposes only, and you test it. And once you know that it's working, then when you actually use it out in the real world, you're going to put it in airplane mode when it's inside the secure case. Again, the airplane mode is to prevent it from running down quickly, because if it's not in airplane mode, it will keep very frequently. Maybe some phones can be configured to do something differently, but what I've seen the default behavior of this phone, at least in the unless the recent upgrades have changed it, the default behavior of the phone will be that it keeps trying to talk to the network. And radio communication costs a lot of energy, a lot of battery power. It'll run the phone down quite rapidly. However, if it's in airplane mode, this phone will last in the secure case, if you don't use it, for several days, maybe a couple weeks, depending on your phone. You should, of course, check every couple of days to see how much power is left and recharge the phone before it runs out of power. So the whole point of this is to have this phone in your secure case for emergencies. You need to call 911, you need to get help, maybe other situations where you're willing to connect to the network, they know where you are, but you need to do that. That's what it's for, so you don't have to go someplace without the phone. If you really think about it, most of the things you do on a phone, they may be more convenient, but you don't need to use a phone to do them. The big selling point of the phones is really for special emergencies or situations like that, where you need to call for help, or maybe you need to get an Uber, a Lyft, a taxi, some kind of special situation that actually don't happen that frequently, where it's nice to have a phone. And today there are actually fewer, almost no pay phones left, things like that, so you really want to take the phone with you. But you don't want people to know where you are, you don't want them to be able to listen to you, take video of you, spy on you. By people, we mean big giant companies like Google and Amazon. We mean the government. We mean all kinds of people. All right, so let's get going. I'm going to show you how this is done. I'm going to turn the camera down here so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so I've got a desktop here, and let me sit up a little bit better. And so what I'm going to do first is make a sheet of... And actually, I'm going to move the phone over here to the side so I have more room to work. I'll make the phone calls with the phone. And I'm going to do this with the phone. And what I'm going to want to do, just to be clear, is I'm going to want a phone to sit inside of here. We're going to fold it over to make the secure case. So let's see. We want to. Okay, so let me actually leave the phone here, and I'm going to, give it a little bit more of this to play with. Let me see. There we go. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay. So what will happen is, let me see if I can do this in a really efficient way. So we want to have this, we're going to measure here. So this is going to be the center of this. In fact, what we're going to do is leave that there. I think this is actually an easy way to do it. And we're going to fold it over right here along the edge here. And we'll stretch it out a little bit more, or spool it out a little bit more. So here we go. So here we go here. And actually, I'm going to just tear that there. Okay, that's good so far. And then we will cut along the edge here. So let's make sure that it's all right. And let's cut this strip off here. May not be. Okay. So let me do that. All right, that's good. And we'll get rid of this, obviously. Just throw it away. And now we have the beginnings of our secure case. All right, so we're going to do that. We want to position this right here in the center. And what we want to do is create a section here covered with the painter's tape, which is an insulating material. That will prevent the touchscreen from interacting with the conducting surface here. All right. So what we're going to do is we'll slide this thing here. And okay, we're going to cut a piece of painter's tape. Okay, this is the painter's tape. I'm going to peel off a piece that's a little bit longer than the phone. That's important so the phone has a place to reside. Take that piece, and what we're going to do is tape it. Actually, we're going to slide this over slightly so we can position it on the center here. Now we want to make sure that the tape overlaps with the other strips of tape so there are no cracks where you might get electrical conduction, and it's to reinforce the foil. Remember, this foil is extremely fragile material. It's really not designed for the kind of use that a secure case would use for it. So to turn it into a material that will survive use, we need to make sure that the tape is fully reinforcing it. If you had two strips of tape and a crack here, so they didn't overlap, that would be a place where it would break very, very easily because the foil is very weak. Okay, so now we're going to have another piece, obviously, of this material, and we're going to do this. And we'll make sure it overlaps. So you can see the phone would go there. We haven't quite covered enough space for the phone. So we are going to cut another piece of this and do that. And let's overlap a lot. We don't need a lot of this here. We've got enough room for the phone. So the phone is going to sit here. Looks good, right? So we're going to move this over here, and we're going to do the same on the other side. So when it folds over, it's in this protected area, pouch. All right, so again, we want to make sure that it overlaps with the other strip to ensure that it's strong and that there's no electrical leakage that's going to happen. So now, the phone's going to go here, and again, it's not quite enough room, so we're going to put another piece of tape down. Okay, let's make sure we've got enough. Okay. So here we go. Do that. All right. And here we can do a lot of overlap. We don't want to use up. So now we have that. Now let's just check things are okay here. Again, it folds over like this, and it's entirely an aesthetic choice on your part, whether you have the shiny side facing on this side or the other way. It doesn't affect the conductivity or the shielding that it provides against the radio network. So that's great. Now, let's discuss a problem. Now, what's going to happen is we will fold this over. We will fold this over twice, very tight, so it's a hermetic seal. A single fold of the foil will not isolate the network. You have to do it at least twice, and we have to do that at both ends, and then we're going to tape it over. But we're going to have an opening here. So the opening, which I showed you with my previous secure case that I made, and I made several of them, is this end here. Now the problem again is the foil is extremely fragile. And so you're going to be taking the phone in and out of this, so you want to reinforce these ends. So that's the next step that we're going to do. So what we're going to do is tape at these ends. We'll put down the tape. So here's a big long piece of tape that will go along the end here. All right, so let's do that. And we're going to have this big long piece of tape, and so I'm going to have the sticky side up here, and to make it easier. So I'm trying not to. We'll see how this works. Actually, this is a bit of an experiment. Let's use the scissors, and we're just going to hold it down like that. Okay, so the scissors fix that problem. So you can see it a little bit better. And I can see it a little bit better. I'm going to move this over here. I can see that side, and we're going to put this right about here. So you can see, now remember, the sticky side is up. The reason we're going to, again, it tends to stick to your fingers, so you can use the point of the scissors. You can use the point of the scissors to deal with that problem. So, all right. Let's see if we can do that. Right. Okay. Actually, it's curling more and more. Did not anticipate that would happen. So let's just do that here. It doesn't stick as well to the metal. And now we're going to move this about halfway, covering half of the. All right, so okay, and unfortunately it came out a little tilted, but that's okay. So we're gonna, all right, let me use this to hold it, and we'll, okay, now we're not gonna put it all the way over because it'll stick to the ruler. We just want to create a crease in it so it will fold over better. Okay, and here. So you can see that it goes here, and you can see it goes there. And it's a little, ideally we would like this to be perfect, but it's not quite perfect, unfortunately. And that end is a little bit weak there. So what I'm going to do is, and remember, this is now the exterior side. So this is going to be completely covered with tape. So I'm going to put, right now, just to keep it strong, I'm going to, let me see. Okay, so again, here we have a big piece of painter's tape, big roll of painter's tape, and I'm going to make it long enough to put here. And we're not ready yet to reinforce the entire back of it. We'll do that later. All right. So again, because it wasn't as centered as I wanted, I want to make sure that I've kind of reinforced this end. All right. So let me, I'm going to trim off the end for now. Now don't cut the edge of the foil, just cut off the overhanging tape, which we'll do there. Cut the overhanging tape. And we're going to do the same thing on the other end here. And, okay. All right. So now, just as a reminder, the purpose of this is to strengthen and reinforce the opening so we don't have exposed. So in the interior here, we don't have exposed foil at the opening. Instead, it's covered with the tape and both protected and reinforced. So the tape protects it from being crumpled, etc., and it also kind of reinforces it, makes it stronger. Now we want to do the same thing on the other end here. So we're going to fold again. We're going to fold this over like that, and then we're going to fold the sides here, and then we're actually going to fold here. Let's see how that works. All right. So the next thing we want to do is make another piece of tape that's long enough to cover the end, or cut another piece of tape that's long enough to cover this end, and we're going to try to put it actually here. I think this somewhat paradoxically seems to be a good way to do it. So the foil is actually above it. Now we press the foil down on it, and again, it's not perfectly covered, but you get the idea. And we're going to fold it over, and that protects both sides, and it gives it at the end here. Okay, so what it's got now is this is reinforced. This is what's going to get banged when you're opening it. And so instead of banging on the foil, which gets torn and very, very easily, you have this protective tape covering. So we're going to snip off the ends. All right, and we're going to snip off the ends here. And when you fold the thing over, we obviously want room for our phone. Okay, again, this is the phone, and the phone is going to reside in this pocket here when you put it in. So what we're going to do is fold this over now. All right. So what we want to do here is fold this about an inch. So let's do this here. We want to put a crease in it. And that's going to go there. So let's see if we can fold that over. Now, what I found from experimentation is that a single fold like this is not going to be enough to isolate it from the network. You want to fold it over twice. And you want it really snug, and that's going to go here. So this is going to be this end, and we will tape this down. But before I do that, I want to do the same on the other end. So again, now another issue about foil is it crinkles a lot and it warps. So you have to treat it very carefully when you do these things. So again, you want to, probably put a ruler in here so that you can put a crease and you can make this very straight. We want these to be straight, both for aesthetic reasons and functional reasons. So we fold this one over, and we fold it over again. All right, so that will hopefully work. Now, before I tape it up, I want to do a test. Hopefully we'll pass the test. We may have to start over or make some changes if it fails the test. Okay, so again, now I'm logged onto my phone. All right, so I'm going to just turn off the airplane mode so I can play calls to it. So let's just verify that I can make a call to it. I'm going to move this out of the way temporarily. Okay, so okay, there we go. We got the call, and I'm going to ignore my call. All right. So now I want to verify that this will work. So again, this is a live phone. It's not in airplane mode. We're going to slide it in here. Let me again. We'll turn it off. We'll put it back on the lock screen. We're going to put it down in here. So again, now it's in this insulated area, so the touchscreen is not coming in contact with the foil. So we're going to do this. We're going to fold back over here. We will be taping this later, but for right now, yes, we want it like this. Okay, you've got the double fold, and now we want to do something even more. Okay, we fold this one over. That's one. We fold it over a second time, and we're actually going to fold it over a third time for the opening flap. And that's it. And I'm going to hold it kind of pressed like it will be with the tape. And I'm going to bring this out, and I'm going to hit redial. Okay, what should happen is you get your voicemail, you get your busy mail like I'm getting. That means the seal is working. The phone is not picking up. You're not hearing it bumping. I'm sorry, making chimes and all that ringing. That's the test. That's to verify that the thing is actually working for your own peace of mind, and also for as a construction tool. I've actually not much had a problem. In the very early designs of this, I didn't do the two folds. I just did one, and they could actually make the call, which is how I know that that's the way to do it. Okay, so what do we do now? So now we want to tape this. We know that this is going to work from our test. We did the test before we taped it, so if there was something wrong, we'd have some opportunity to recover from this situation. So we want to tape the entire exterior now. So how we're going to do this is pretty straightforward. Okay, we want to tape over here. Now remember, part of the issue is we want these strips of tape ultimately to be overlapping, so there's no cracks for electrical signals to get through, and the cracks are also where the thing will fall apart, because the foil again has very little actual strength, so it will be damaged very, very quickly by use. That's why you need to have it reinforced with painter's tape or some other type of tape or material. Again, you can make these, and those of you who are into costumes or into various activities probably can come up with other ways, other materials to make it out of, such as cloth, cardboard, various kind of papers. You can use your creativity. Again, all of that can be done with readily available materials, which are used for, taking care of your home, clothing, that kind of thing. Cooking in the kitchen. Nobody will know that you have this unless you show it to them. You don't have to order it on Amazon, and it's, particularly if you already have these materials available at home, it's cheaper. It's just a couple dollars to make one of these. So let me see what we can do here. Okay, again, one of the things I want to make sure is I have overlapping strips of tape, so there's no cracks for this to happen. So let me just power through this as rapidly as I can. And okay, let's make sure that, incidentally, you want to try to make this as tight as you can, as smooth as you can. Again, notice I'm doing it with the phone inside the case, because we want the case to have room for the phone. We want to make sure it fits in there nicely. Okay, so far I'm still working on this side. I'm going to put one more strip of tape, or actually probably two, so we'll see what I'm going to do here. All right, so we want to cover this here. We do that. All right, there we go. We're going to wrap it over the bottom here. As you can see, we need to make sure the bottom is reinforced when we get to it. Looks a little, I would say, not sticking together totally here up at the top, so we probably want to put a piece of tape along here, which is fairly easy to do. So we're going to have a piece of tape, and actually I think we can do this. It'll be all right. So we're going to start that tape just below the lip of the case, and hopefully this will work okay. All right, and then we're going to wrap over here. So we've got it on one side at this point. So remember, the way it's going to work is when you are using it, you'll stick your phone in it. It will be folded over a couple of times here, except of course it will be taped on both sides. So that makes it a little bit stiff, but that's what you need to do to reinforce it. So let me, let's see. So we also want to reinforce these edges. So let me take care of that first. Okay, so let's have a strip of tape. I'm going to cover that edge. All right, so we're going to do this, and what I would suggest we do is we go in here. Now notice I'm letting it stick out over the edge. I'm going to, seal it tightly here to the rest of the structure surface. And now I'm going to fold it over, so I'm protecting that edge from getting beaten up, because you will hit the edge when you're using it. Okay, a little bit off here. Let me fold this over a little bit. And, all right, there we go. All right, so that's that edge. We want to do the same on this edge here. Okay, because you can see right now if the aluminum is exposed, you don't want that. It's very easy to damage. It'll split there, and it also may have electrical things going on, so you want to insulate it. By electrical, we don't mean shocks or things like that, but some type of conduction which could perhaps affect the phone or unknown ways. Electrical things work kind of strangely. So actually, while I'm doing this, I could give a short lecture on this. It's not a lecture, but a short comment, which is when you read various, well, I'm a physics background, so books about electricity and stuff, they make various statements that don't seem to always match what you see in the real world. And the way they get around this is they sort of vaguely talk about grounding problems to get around that. But one thing I found is many books and articles will claim that a radio signal can't go through a mesh, okay, a mesh which has the dimensions of the mesh, so the spacing between the wires is significantly less than the wavelength of the radio signal. So for example, cell phones typically are using a radio signal of around, I don't know, 900 megahertz, a gigahertz, which has a wavelength of the radio signal that is about a foot in English units, about 30 centimeters in metric units. And so theoretically, if you had a wire mesh that would say was an inch or a couple centimeters spacing between the wires, the radio couldn't get through it. And I found that's not true in general. You have to have a hermetic seal. You can't seal the phone with even very small cracks. Even if there's a very small crack in your shielding, the RF signal, the radio signal, will go through. And I found that experimentally. It doesn't really match a lot of things that you read in sort of theoretical literature, but it's what actually happens. That's unfortunate because it makes it harder to shield, from being spied on, but that seems to be the reality. So that's one of the reasons that I'm kind of careful about trying to do this, not only to reinforce the aluminum foil, which is fragile, as I mentioned, not only for that reason, but also because these complicated electrical pickup phenomenon, and they're not necessarily what you think they're going to be. So you want to try to isolate components of anything you build if you can. Avoid the so-called grounding issues or weird radio conductance and things like that. So, all right, so. And if you're kind of like a little uncomfortable with the electronics with radio, just consider that radio is a lot like sound, except it's faster. I mean, it does work a little bit differently than sound, obviously, but both sound and radio signals are basically waves. They basically transmit us, sort of in a straight line, but not exactly, right? You can hear around corners. And in the same way, radio signals can get around corners. They can do funny things just like sound can. So if you're trying to understand what might happen, thinking of the radio signals as kind of like sound is a good way to, you won't always be right, but it's a good way to think about it. Of course, if you think of it as kind of like sound, except it's electrical, then you can see why it gets through tiny cracks. Of course, sounds will get through tiny cracks too. So if you want to really isolate your phone from something, you have to completely seal it. And with sound, for example, that's very obvious why that happens. The sound is going to come through. Now, obviously, there are differences because there isn't exactly a material that's a perfect reflector to sound, although there are some materials that are kind of like that. But again, metals, things like tin foil, steel, copper, especially very good conductors like copper, gold, those materials will if they completely reflect the radio signals. And most materials that we deal with, including metals, are not perfect reflectors for sound. There are some specialized materials, I think, maybe some plastics or whatever, that actually do the same thing. But in everyday life, it's very rare to encounter a material that's a perfect reflector for sound, whereas metal surfaces are very good reflectors for radio signals. So that might be more than you care to know, but okay. So now, all right, we've completely sealed it, and it's probably good to check and see here that can you see any of the aluminum foil visible through the cracks. If that's the case, you want to reinforce it, because the exposed foil is very fragile, and it will crack, it will tear there very, very easily. So if you want this to last a while, which you do, obviously you don't want to be making these very often. And it's a good idea to make 2 of them. I'm not going to do that in this demo, obviously, but these are very easy to misplace, forget where they are, and you can also lose them or damage them. And of course, these are not as tough as the commercial ones, although by reinforcing them with the right materials, you can probably make them fairly tough. So anyway, they're prone to getting lost, and they could also be destroyed. So it's a good idea to have a backup in a known location. It could be, you know, where you put your wallet or something like that, that you have a standard place to put something so you don't lose it. Put the backup one in that same or a similar location where you can easily find it if you misplace these. It's more common to misplace them. I've done that many times. It's very easy to put one down somewhere. They're tiny. And, okay, and so you're like, where is it? All right, so now before I seal this one up, and I made this one a little bit bigger than you need to. There's a little free room here, maybe an extra inch you could shave off. But, so I've done this, like this, and let's check the phone again. Hopefully it will work all right. Again, these are handmade things, so sometimes they don't work as planned. We'll see what happens. Okay, so again, we got the busy message. We got the answering machine. That means it was not able to talk to the phone. That's what I expected to happen, and that's the goal. All right, so again, you want to test it at this point and make sure you actually achieved that. All right, so what about sealing it? Right now, I was just holding it by hand, which is obviously impractical. It'll come open. It's important that this be double folded. So you fold it once, you fold it twice, and then we need to hold it down. So how do we do that? Well, painter's tape works pretty well for this. You can get Velcro strips at hardware stores, at drug stores, places like that. Those may work. Actually, so far, this seems like a little bit better the option. So, all right. So, take a slice of tape, and that slice of tape, small piece of tape, is now your lock. Basically holds it in place. Now, that's obviously kind of impractical. It might come off. So how do we make sure that the tape stays on in the right way? We want it to open at this end, but not here. Now that's one of the reasons for using painter's tape, because it's designed to stick and be pulled off easily. And in parts of this design, you want some material like Velcro or like painter's tape that does that. Now, in fact, this reinforcing doesn't necessarily require something like painter's tape. It's just very easy to work with. In fact, a more adhesive material tape might actually be better, but I haven't really proven that. So I'm going to make my life a little bit easier using another thinner piece of paper actually, no, let's just use the big thick one. Keep it simple and keep it. So I'm going to tape over here to hold this, to anchor this end of the piece of tape to the lid, to the flap. I'm sorry, the flap is probably the right way to say it. Okay, so there we go. So let's cut a small piece here. Okay, so this is a small piece. What we're going to do is to hold down the piece of the other piece of tape, which I'm using as like a Velcro strap or something. Now that end is secured. So that end is secured, and this end is my seal. Now I might have to fix that occasionally if it gets broken, but you get the idea. All right. So there, I'm done. I have a completely finished one of these. Now what I generally do is I put this in a backpack. As you can see, it's a little big, so and I'd usually, for additional protection, you don't have to do this, but it'll last longer. You can put it inside of one of these Ziploc type bags. You can pick these up at stores, drugstores, CVS, Safeway, Target. They have these kind of things, and that'll help protect it. Again, I have a small, lightweight backpack, and that's how I carry this around. If you made it a little bit smaller, you could fit it in a large pocket, or even a large pocket in some jackets. This size would work. If you made it a little bit smaller this way, sideways, then you could probably put it in like an overcoat or something like that. Again, what this is buying you is that that this will protect you from being monitored and tracked. However, you have the phone, and as you can see, it kind of pulls apart. So you want to make sure that you flattened it out and it's used to the proper shape. You have firm creases, things like that, so it doesn't pull apart under its own pressure. It should be comfortable folding tight. And so it's just another warning. Now, I've been using these for probably about 6 months, and I'm sure that there will be improvements, and probably some of the people watching this can actually, come up with improvements. But this addresses a number of issues that I've encountered. So there you are. It took me, and if you're paying attention, it took me about 42 minutes to do this. Now, I've done this several times before, so I'm sure if you were starting, you'd have to plan for more time probably, unless you're very skilled with the materials from something else that you do. If you work with costuming or other activities, then you might actually be able to do it faster than I can do it. But probably if you're doing it the first time and you don't have much experience with making, purses or costuming or whatever hobby might give you these type of skills or per profession, I would guess you probably would want to set aside, probably at least an hour and a half. Give yourself some extra time behind the time that it took me. Although with this demonstration of how to do it, you can sort of follow along. But I would plan on it taking a little bit longer. And if it turns out it doesn't, that's great. But plan for some extra time in case something goes wrong. And I've occasionally, earlier versions, I've occasionally like cut the wrong place and had to start over. Things like that happen. And I'm getting more experienced at it, so that didn't happen this time very much. All right, so let me just conclude that this is inexpensive, especially if you already have the materials at home. It is made from, let's remind people, tin foil you can get pretty much anywhere. And my example is done with painter's tape, which is widely available both online and in physical stores. It's very, very widely used. Your home improvement. You can use other types of tape and other materials, of course. You also need some kind of ruler. I used a kind of fancy ruler, but you can do it, and I have done it with just an ordinary kind of school ruler that you can get pretty much anywhere. And of course, you need a pair of scissors. And I do recommend, although you don't have to have the Ziploc bag, getting a couple of these, so when you put it in a backpack or some other way of carrying it around, that provides some additional protection and also holds it together more. So this is intended to prevent you from being monitored and tracked by various corporations, the government, pretty much anybody that might hack into your phone, whatever their reasons might be. So it's very, very likely that there are backdoors built into the software in smartphones, so certain people can get access to them regardless of what is claimed publicly. I'm not going to go into why I believe that, probably know that, but believe that. But you should realize that if you have a phone that's talking to the network, or you have a laptop, or pretty much any device that's talking or could talk to Wi-Fi, cellular networks, etc., it can probably spy on you. And remember, these devices now have very high resolution, high quality cameras. They have very high quality microphones that can certainly listen to you several feet away from them if they're not sealed up in something like this, which of course blocks the camera completely and muffles the sound for sure. And I didn't go into further measures you could take to insulate it for sound, but it's going to be very hard for somebody to spy on you, especially if this is wrapped up and in your backpack. So remember, they could theoretically record your audio while you're off the network and then transmit it up the network when you reconnect. So you want to watch out for that. Now, this probably would prevent them from actually recording what you're saying. So that concludes this demonstration of how to make an inexpensive, cheap, homemade secure case, do-it-yourself, DIY, homemade secure case that will isolate your phone from the cellular networks, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, other radio communication. If there was some secret little chip in here that used radio to communicate in some completely undocumented way with certain people, let's say, it wouldn't work. It would be stopped by this device. So you can keep the phone for emergencies. You need to call 911. You need to call a friend or something like that, some special situation. Although it's very convenient to use a phone as your camera, as your MP3 player, various things like that, all of those can be offloaded to separate devices, or you just don't do them. And that's actually, of course, you have to be concerned that those devices are not talking to the radio network. They can spy on you too. But get devices that are very simple, that don't have a radio connection, and that's what you should do. Our previous videos and articles on the contradictory numbers on the CDC website have repeatedly been censored by a range of social media services, such as LinkedIn here. This was a few weeks ago. This is the actual post that was censored. We've run into this with a number of different platforms. It's rather concerning, especially considering that these posts are pointing out contradictory data on the official CDC websites and documents. Apparently, it is a real threat to the society, democracy, human lives to point out obvious, gross discrepancies on government websites. You can bypass this censorship with our censored search website and service, which you can reach at censored-search.net or censored-search.com or censored-search.org. We may add additional names later, but those are the names right now. It's censored-search. Find the answers to your problems censored by advertisers and other powerful interests. It is free. We have a free version, which ranks the search results according to popularity. That is how many other websites link to the page, the search result. You can also pay and get more control and transparency into the algorithms. You can get access to more advanced artificial intelligence algorithms that look through the censored content and try to identify pages that are censored because they contain factual, true information, and separate those out from other ones which are not so useful. A popularity contest cannot always do that correctly, and popularity contests can be manipulated in various ways. Thus, check out censoredsearch.com, censored-search.net, censored-search.org. This concludes this video presentation. If you like this video, please click like. Please click subscribe and the notification bell if you would like to receive more content from us. You can avoid internet censorship by subscribing directly to our RSS news feed. Please consider sharing the link by email and on your website or blog, in addition to liking, upvoting, or sharing on increasingly censored, advertising beholden, big company social media. We have encountered such censorship. Mathematical software is developing algorithms and software to automate data analysis, reducing the risks of costly errors and increasing the predictive power of the results. You can support our work financially by subscribing on our Patreon page, https://www.patreon.com/mathsoft, or scanning the QR code in the lower right corner.